Easter has arrived in the UK, and we ask ourselves, can Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton resurrect their championships, or will Ferrari continue their own rebirth in Italy? Welcome back to Grid Talk, the Grid Talk podcast. This is episode 187, where we will preview the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. I'm your host, Tom Horrox, and I'm joined today by F1 writer Olivia Kairu.
Hello, thank you for having me, Tom.
No problem. It's a pleasure to have you as always. So make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can click the bell to be notified whenever we go live, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up. If you enjoyed the show, please give the show a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, which really helps us climb up the rankings. So this weekend, Olivia, we're going into Imola. It's our third trip in the turbo hybrid era, and it's the first of 2 races in Italy this year. Now, Ferrari go into the race as championship leaders with 104 points. So, how do you see Ferrari's weekend going? So the last time they won in Imola was 2006, and the last win in Italy was 2019 with Leclerc in Monza. So, how do you feel they're going to fare this weekend?
I think they're going to do well, especially after how they've been doing in the past 3 races, rather.
Mm.
Two, three,
3 races so far.
three. Yeah, so I don't think there's much to be worried about for Ferrari. They have mentioned that they're not going to be bringing any upgrades because it doesn't make sense for them, especially to do with the sprint happening so close to practice. So I don't know what that's going to mean for their chances, but I don't think it's going to hurt them considerably.
No, it's something that actually had completely slipped my mind about it being a sprint weekend, the first of 3 sprint weekends this season. So I think that's going to affect quite a few people with regards to their strategy. And I think it's with Ferrari, it's going to be one of those seasons where they're going to be looking at developing not so much. They're going to be looking to do what Mercedes did last year, where they're just trying to maximise their package as much as they can throughout the season. So how do you see the battle with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz? Obviously, at the moment, Leclerc seems to have the upper hand, but Sainz hasn't been that far. Just hasn't had the rub of the green with his teammate.
Yeah, no. Last weekend was kind of they dropped the ball kind of with signs, so I don't know. Um, Hopefully he can pick it back up and go against his teammate because I do think he has the will and the strength and the drive to go against him. Just hasn't been right moment, right time, right situation. So hopefully he does because I do know that he's very diligent with how he prepares for races and he's very like studious about it. Like he will study the track, study all kinds of different strategies that he can implement. So hopefully he can bring a fight to Charles at home this weekend. So
Yeah, he likes to be known. Well, he has become known as the smooth operator, but it's I know he mentioned in close season that he actually quite likes a car on the edge, a lot like Verstappen, and the smooth operator nickname that he's been given it isn't really that accurate. But he, like you say, very studious, very detailed driver. I think he gets that a lot from his father, and I think he's my favourite of the 2 drivers, but just because I prefer him as a person, Charles Leclerc, I've absolutely no doubt has got the talent, and perhaps probably the overall peaks of Charles Leclerc's performances, probably the more likely to succeed over the course of a season. And given the luck that Carlos Sainz has had, Leclerc certainly in a very strong position at the moment. But we hope that he turns that around and certainly starts to bring the fight to Leclerc, even more just for the championship than anything, because we want to see this. We're not going to match last year, but we want to see this championship at least be contested. And if Ferrari are going to run away with it, then Sainz needs to get on the right side of luck and raise his performances. But we'll move on to the world champions, Mercedes. They had a 1-2 domination in 2020, but in 2021 it was a different story of just a second place. More damage limitation for Mercedes this weekend, or do you see them moving forwards?
I think it's more damage limitation this weekend, because they still don't know what they have with their car. They don't know the limits of its performance and how fast it can go, how long can withstand on track. So I don't think we're expecting as strong of a result this weekend. Hopefully they can hold it at where they were last weekend. I think it was fourth and fifth, third and fourth. So Hopefully they can do that this weekend, but I doubt it because Imola's very hard on like cars body work, and that seems to be not their strong suit at this point because it's the long pit lane, the long baguette curves, the long. It's very like taxing on the chassis. So I don't know if the porpoising issue will be something that they can get a handle on this weekend.
It's a very, very good point. Yeah, and it was especially hard on their bodywork last year when George Russell went into the side of Valtteri Bottas. That was
Oh
particularly hard on their
yeah.
bodywork. But yeah, it's I think with the track the way it is, it's there are some high speed elements, but there's also some slow corners. So I think for the championship perspective, I'm hoping it's not going to be quite as bad as it has been. But again, probably the best they can hope for at the moment is to be the third fastest team. If they can make a step towards Red Bull, then that would be great. But I personally, I don't see that. But they are second in the championship for a reason, and that's because they seem to be finishing races. The only team to finish with both drivers in the points in every race so far this season. So that's definitely a pro. They always say you have to finish first. First you have to finish. But how do you feel it's going to pan out with the teammate battle? Because at the moment we know that obviously Lewis Hamilton has had one bad performance in Saudi Arabia and a bit of bad luck last time out. But George Russell has shown that he's right there with Lewis Hamilton. So do you see that continuing, or do you think that that Hamilton is going to get on top of his young charger teammate?
That's a very interesting question because I actually have no clue how it could pan out because it's not like Lewis is fighting for a championship at this moment really because the car isn't giving him much of a chance to because of its reliability and everything. So I don't see a reason as to why Lewis could be considered driver number one in the races to come, unless hopefully things pick up and he's winning races and then it becomes a Bottas Lewis situation where George becomes the Bottas in the situation. But as for now, I do think they should be on par. But maybe that's just me being idealistic and naive. So I don't know.
I don't think it's being idealistic. I think it's absolutely what's going to happen because Mercedes have shown that they never favour a driver until one is realistically not in a championship fight. You know, think back to a couple of years ago, and Hamilton was clearly the guy in the fight for the championship, and they allowed him past Bottas to push in Hungary. I think it was before the summer break. He couldn't improve position, so he dropped back behind his teammate, and that was both lauded and criticised at the same time by lots of people, saying, well, you know, that could be the result that lose you the championship. But I think Mercedes have proved that they will not favour one driver over another. Just the natural order tends to be that Hamilton tends to be the lead driver because that's where he is with regards to his teammate. But with George Russell being so much closer, seemingly so far we've seen, I do think that Hamilton still has the overall edge over the two at the moment. But as we saw when Hamilton first joined Formula One, it took him 5-6 races to get his feet under the table at McLaren, and then by kind of Monaco, he was pushing Fernando Alonso. So we may well see I know it's a slightly different scenario, but we may well see a similar thing with George Russell once he really gets his feet under the table at that team. Is he going to push Hamilton further and further? And when there's no championship up for grabs, there certainly won't be team orders. I don't think there'll be team orders all season unless one of them is genuinely going for the championship, which, given the way they've started, I can't really see that happening, which is, it seems crazy to think that, but second in the championship, but they're still a long way behind Ferrari already. So it's my early season prediction of Ferrari for Constructors' Championship is looking quite good so far. But the team that have the current Drivers' World Champion is Red Bull Racing, with the Red Bull Racing powertrain that's been causing so many issues for them so far. Red Bull were the winners last year out, but there's definitely reliability question marks over their car. And Sergio Perez has shown some very good form at the start of the season so far. What are your thoughts on Red Bull and that team dynamic and their chances this weekend?
Um, I think they should be up there and like in the standing for the race weekend rather. But I don't know. I especially to do with how they haven't finished in the last what they've had like DNFs in the past few races. So I don't know um how things could pan out for them because the with no real answers as to what the reliability issues are rather than something to do with the fuel system that hasn't really been disclosed yet. I do not, I can't really form a concrete opinion on this, but I do have a hope that they will finish up there and strong, or at least just finish the race this
Well,
time.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Verstappen has shown that he's a match for Leclerc in race trim and in all the races. Leclerc's definitely had the overall edge, and certainly in the last race, Ferrari just didn't look like they were ever going to be challenged for that race win. But Verstappen has certainly shown that he's got the racecraft to challenge Leclerc in the races. But with Sergio Perez has shown a much closer match to him this year so far. He's obviously he has the bad luck. Excuse me, the bad luck in the first race of the season, similar to Max Verstappen, and he was his pole position and then taken away from him with a Latifi safety car. Some might say that's revenge from the previous season, where very much benefited Red Bull in that situation. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic there as well, because if Ferrari do run away with this, which we all hope it doesn't happen, obviously, but if Red Bull are throwing all the updates at Verstappen and they're failing, and then Perez is just bringing it home and getting second places and occasional wins, then comes a point where they may well end up favouring Sergio Perez over Max Verstappen. Can you see a world where Red Bull Racing favour Sergio Perez over Max Verstappen?
Oh my God, Helmut Marko would not have it. I do though. It makes sense to, because if one driver is not performing to the ability required of them, and the other is, it makes sense to move all your eggs into their basket. So, hopefully, Red Bull can be clear and level-headed in making such a decision, because if it's going to benefit the team, then they might as well do it. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, because their loyalties lie really, really heavily with Verstappen, as badly as it sounds. But it's tough to see. It is tough to see.
Yeah, I was very much playing devil's advocate there. I can't see a scenario where Red Bull do favour Sergio Perez over Max Verstappen personally, but it's certainly a question that needs asking later on if this form does continue. I mean, in the championship, Perez does sit further ahead of than Verstappen, and it's going to be an interesting situation if that trend continues. But trends that we all hope continues, especially in my neck of the woods, as McLaren's recent upturn in form. They're fourth in the championship. However, Norris has alluded to that being potentially a bit of a false dawn. Daniel Ricciardo being a bit more upbeat and hopeful, but it certainly seems like it's more of a track-specific thing, as that car hasn't changed since the opening race of the season. What's your thoughts on McLaren, and are you as hopeful as I am that they're gonna perform this weekend?
Hopefully they do, because it would be nice to see a McLaren up there again after last year with Lando and P3. So hopefully they do, but I don't see how they could. Just like you said, the car hasn't changed much. I don't think they're bringing in any upgrades, because they still haven't gotten a handle on things. So I don't see how much could change. I hope something changes for the better. But this last result, the P5, P6 for the team was so good. So hopefully it's not. Hopefully the track specifics of Albert Park kind of help and translate into Imola, but I don't see how much could change.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful, but it more comes out of hope than than expectancy. 24 points in the constructors' championship. They're just ahead of Alpine on 22, but already quite a way behind Mercedes, and Mercedes are not having a good time of things. So and obviously Red Bull just in there in third place, still 21 points behind them. So it's certainly fourth place is gonna be the best they can hope for this year, but they've done a great job, like Mercedes have, of maximising their results. They've scored points whenever they've been able to score points, and Daniel Ricciardo really showing that he is the team player. At his home Grand Prix, told to stay behind his teammate that was having fuel saving issues, and was losing 2 or 3 seconds a lap on the run in there, and Daniel, despite it being his home race, was sitting there behind him and protecting him and making sure the team brought home that 5-6. Very much payback, I believe, for Monza last year when Norris could have attacked Ricciardo, but was told to do the best thing for the team and didn't question it. So that rivalry in that team, despite what Netflix want to try and say, does seem to be a strong connection, a strong team. It's a very healthy rivalry there. They want to beat each other, but they're very much putting the team first, which is great to see. So looking just behind them to Alpine with 22 points, just 2 points behind McLaren. They look like, in Fernando Alonso's hands, that car looks like it can do good things, but they're not really capitalising on their pace they've had so far. And Esteban Ocon, although he had the better of Fernando in the first race due to Fernando's tyre issues, just hasn't seemed to be showing the pace that car has. He was absolutely nowhere in Australia and just trundled home to a low end points finish. How do you see this weekend paying for them? Can Ocon get on top of it, or can Fernando bring that thing for yet another best race of his season ever?
I've always kind of had the feeling that it's so hard to place Alpine in the grid. Like, they do tend to be all over the place, and I think I do think they will have a solid weekend at Imola, because apparently they're bringing in upgrades. They did last year with they kind of made it some way to slim down the car and the side pods, and it was very aero. So I think they're gonna do something similar this weekend to help with drag and everything. So I do think they will have a smooth weekend. I hope Fernando can kind of get back the momentum he had from, I think it was his qualifying lap in Australia. So hopefully things turn out well for the team. But yeah.
Yeah, I hope they've replaced that 50 pence bung or washer, whatever it was that failed, that's ended his the best lap of his career, no doubt, as he likes to tell us. But it's a strange one, and what another interesting subplot to Alpine as the season goes on is that teammate battle. And although based on the opening 3 races, Ocon hasn't really shone like Alonso has, he's still been there picking up the points. And Alonso's performance, despite showing a lot of pace at the weekend, he had absolutely no right finishing down in 17th place, but that was where he was, because that's how long it took him to get from the start to the finish with no real problems. So he didn't manage his race correctly. He took a risk and it didn't pay off, and Ocon was there picking up the points. And in the background there, you've got Oscar Piastri, the chosen one, in the background looking for a seat. So how can you see this panning out? Obviously, Fernando Alonso's in the last year of his contract. Esteban Ocon's got a long-term contract. Can you see a scenario where Fernando Alonso is told that he's no longer needed, or do you think that they're going to be cancelling Esteban Ocon's contract or farming him out somewhere else, or are they just going to stick with their guys? Because I can't see anyone beyond those 3 drivers being in that team next year.
I think if anything, they're going to stick to the 3, but I don't know in what rotation. Obviously Ocon is in his seat, so he's safe for a while, but I do think that I doubt that Alonso is going to have an unproductive season. He's going to deliver, but eventually. But Oscar Piastri, just like you said, he's lurking, and he's lurking very loudly, and he's making appearances, and he's rallying support, and he's young and fresh and new. So that is something that the team has to think about really, really, really carefully. But I really don't know how it could pan out, but I do see a scenario in which Oscar Piastri does replace Alonso within the next season.
It would be great to see him in the sport. I think he deserves to be in the sport, but he'll be a brave man who bets against Fernando Alonso, just retiring not on his terms, or certainly leaving the team not on his terms. I can, in my head, I see him standing behind Esteban Ocon and whispering in his ear, "Lovely contract you got there, Esteban. It'd be a shame if something would have happened to it." I just see it's just this guy just lurking and just like causing trouble and like leaving thumbtacks on Ocon's seat, and because he's clearly got the talent, and it'd be great to see him in Formula One. But yeah, he there's just
In
no
his
place
time.
for him right now, which
Yeah.
is really hard to see. But Alfa Romeo are a team that I've certainly in the past been very critical of, and based on the last couple of seasons, in 2021 they got a 13th and a 14th in a very unproductive, boring race as usual. 9th and 10th in 2020, double points finish. So they seem to like to run line astern at Imola. Can Zhou Guanyu stay close to Bottas this weekend, or will it be another dominating performance from Valtteri Bottas?
I think I think they'll both find a way to end up in the points, but I don't know if Zhou Guanyu will have the ability to stay close to his teammate. Um, I do think that they will try and have a strong weekend at home because they have to show up for the home crowd. So there's that. But I don't know if he can um, hold on to his teammate from previous past experience. But he has had a strong weekend considering he's a rookie, and the people that were rookies, like Nicholas Latifi, are struggling a bit in the back there. So I do think he will have a strong weekend. That for me does not seem to be um, in the argument, but I don't know if he will be able to stay close to Valtteri.
Well, the Alfa Romeo car is rumored to be the lightest on the grid. It was even in testing, it was the only one that was coming in under the legal weight at the time. They've certainly shown that they've developed their way into competitiveness. 13 points so far, the biggest haul at this stage of the season for quite a few years, and it's good to see them fighting. I mean, you got that Ferrari engine in there, the Alfa Romeo, proud Italian brand, so it's almost like a home race for them. The team obviously being under the cover of it all is a Sauber, is based in Switzerland, but it's very much an Italian team throughout the DNA as well. So it's certainly the home support is gonna be cheering for them and the Ferrari, and potentially not quite so vociferously towards the other Ferrari powered team in Haas, who sit just behind Alfa Romeo with 12 points, just a point behind. 12 points seems like a ridiculous number of points for Haas at this stage of the season. Their best result here was 14th in a very, very different Haas team. They had a completely different way to go racing last year. They seem to have one strong weekend, one bad weekend so far, or two strong weekends, one bad weekend this far. So, which Haas do you think is turning up this weekend? Is it the great punchy little Haas that can fight the Mercedes, or is it the Haas that just doesn't seem to be anywhere again?
Hopefully, the punchy Haas. I think it's gonna be that one. Considering that they have a Ferrari engine in the back of in their car, really. So I hope it's gonna be a strong weekend for Haas. I think it was track specific last time. Also the issue with the chassis and having not as many with them for the race. So hopefully that does not affect them as much, and they have a strong weekend. But I do see a more competitive Haas coming in for the race weekend.
I hope so too, and it does seem that the points are likely to be mostly coming from Kevin Magnussen. He's really shown what having an experienced driver in that car can do for it, and it does make you wonder if he was in that team last year. What could he have done? Could he potentially have got those points? There weren't many occasions where the Haas was up there fighting for potential points. But again, so far this season, Mick Schumacher, I know he beat Kevin Magnussen in the last race, but a little bit extenuating circumstances. Magnussen under the weather, not really 100%, and Schumacher staying out of trouble and executing a decent strategy and finishing ahead of his teammate in the end. That battle is fascinating because you've got Mick Schumacher in a Ferrari-powered car, and the romance of Mick Schumacher at Ferrari is obviously going to be grabbed hold of, especially in Italy. And I hope for his sake that he does well this year against a very experienced driver in Kevin Magnussen. But I don't see I don't see him getting anywhere near Kevin Magnussen over the course of the season. He's shown so far 2 out of 3 weekends that he's in a different league to Mick Schumacher. It's only last week that was the blot on his copybook. What's your thoughts on Schumacher and Magnussen, and just Schumacher as a driver in general? Is this his last chance, or are they going to stick with him for the next few years?
I think they're gonna have to stick with him for the next few years because I do think he has a lot of potential. So it's just that he has to build it up, and it seems like he's kind of getting his lay of the land and more experience. So maybe he's one of those slow burners, but I don't think that Haas has any not business rather, but like they don't have the ammunition to just let go of him because I do think he's such a big part of the sport through his father and now through everyone's support for him, and I don't think he should be let go of. But I do agree with you in the fact that there's a huge deficit in performance between him and Magnussen, and I do think Magnussen is going to be the one bringing in the points for the season, like the large chunk of points for the season, hopefully, if the car is still reliable and still strong. But yeah.
Yeah, speaking of huge deficits in performance, certainly last year the biggest deficit in performance was Pierre Gasly with Yuki Tsunoda. And moving on to AlphaTauri, they're sitting there with 10 points, and probably they seem to, for me, have replaced Alfa Romeo as the most anonymous team on the grid. I don't remember anything any AlphaTauri's done over the course of the season so far without really thinking about it. A stunning 7th place for Gasly last season, but then Daniel Kvyat in 2020 came home in 4th place. So again, the team just goes under the radar. I don't remember that 4th place at all. So they just seem to be just kind of disappearing into the ether and getting results. But this season, the results don't seem to be coming so far. I don't doubt they have a decent car, but they just seem to be a little step behind the rest of the midfield. What's your thoughts on AlphaTauri?
I do think the reliability issues have kind of sprinkled down into the sister team. So I just like you said, they kind of are slipping through the cracks because it's you do tend to forget what's going on with the team, because last season, as much as Pierre Gasly was holding his own in the team, Yuki Tsunoda was kind of slipping back and back. So but now it seems that Pierre Gasly sits very, very comfortably at a P6, P7, or a P10. So I don't know if there's more that he can do for the team, or if there's more that he can bring to the table to kind of break through the monotony that's been going on within the team. So I don't know, but hopefully they can at least finish the race and finish in the points this weekend, because I guess it's kind of like a second home for them, really, in Italy. So yeah, hopefully that goes well for them.
Yeah, this is genuinely a team that is based in Italy. The Faenza base of the original Minardi team is where this team started, and yeah, a genuine Italian team, even if they are owned by Red Bull and powered by Red Bull powertrain. So definitely they will 100% treat this as a home race, as well as Monza in a few weekends' time. And Yuki Tsunoda is a polarizing character. You love him, you hate him, you love to hate him, you hate to love him. He's just one of those characters that you just don't know where to stand with him. And I found myself towards the end of last season, he really looked like he was turning things around, and that performance in Abu Dhabi, where he was pushing and nearly could have potentially got a podium, and he just seemed to be turning things around. And this season it's been almost a bit of a control look delete return to form for him. Can you see him fighting back and showing some of that end of season form that he showed, or is this kind of the beginning of the end for him?
I don't think it's the beginning of the end for him. I think he does seem to be a little more level-headed, a little more present. So hopefully he can continue to bring what he had at the end of the season into the season. Maybe it was just like a lull in performance, and he continued to regress back into his beginning ways. So I do think he might have the opportunity to be up there in the points and kind of again break the monotony within the team that's beginning to set in. So yeah.
Yeah, again, it's difficult to talk about AlphaTauri really with the way their season started again, just very very anonymous. But one team that was in the headlines a lot last weekend and finally got noticed, some for good reasons, some for bad reasons. Williams will be massively buoyed by their points from Alex Albon last weekend, but they're still not where they were expecting and hoping to be at the start of this year. Do you think Albon can repeat his performance from last week, and can Latifi keep it out of the barriers?
I don't think Latifi can keep it after the barriers. I say that very quietly here in Canada. But I do think that Alex Albon does have another chance at bringing in points for the team. I don't know why I think that. I think it's just that it's a feeling, because it does feel like he's come back with more of an urgency to perform within F1. So I do hope that it continues to shine through the season, but I don't know if Nicholas Latifi can step up to the plate and do the same.
It's a really interesting situation with Latifi, because we look at George Russell's time at Williams, and everyone lauded George Russell for his amazing performances, whilst criticising Alex Albon for his performances in the Red Bull. And a lot of people would have quite happily seen Alex Albon not return to Formula One ever. And now he's up against his more experienced teammate in Nicholas Latifi now. You know, they came through Formula 2 at the same time, and they were, I believe they were teammates at I can't remember which team it was, Carlin maybe they were teammates at.
Yeah.
And they were very closely matched, but in Formula 1, Albon has just instantly just rocketed away from Latifi, which, given that he's been in that car for 2 years, well, not that car, but he's been entrenched in that team for 2 years, it's a difficult situation to swallow. And it does make you think, well, was it that Albon is that good, or is it just Latifi has not been great and it's made George look better than he was when he was there? It's certainly a possibility. I mean, George is obviously showing that he's got the business working alongside Hamilton, but you know, when Nikita Mazepin was testing in a Mercedes, he was putting in similar times to Lewis Hamilton, and we all know how that turned out. So it may just be that Mercedes is a better car to drive. But certainly Alex Albon has rejuvenated his career at Williams, and is may well be in line for that Yuki Tsunoda seat back at the AlphaTauri if things don't work out, or if Perez doesn't quite work out. He may well be back in line for that Red Bull seat. It's a difficult situation for Latifi. I think it's going to get really late, really early if he can't get on top of things. I think Williams have shown now that they are willing to shy away from the pay drivers and push towards performance, which is what the team need to do. Dorilton are not going to hang around if the team is just going to languish at the back and score the odd point. They need to push forward. And I can foresee, I don't know if you can, but I can certainly foresee a scenario where they say, thanks for your money, Latifi, but we need to chase performance and you're not bringing it. What do you think? Is that a possibility, or am I being a bit harsh on him?
No, I think you're definitely right about that. I feel the same as well. I don't think that, as bad as it sounds, I don't think that Latifi has any business in Formula One if all he can do is throw the car into the barrier, because even in the last race at Imola, he did the same thing. So hopefully this weekend he can keep it on the track and at least get to the checkered flag. But just, I think you mentioned that Alex Albon's had quite a considerable pull away from his teammate, and I do hope that it feels like it has something to do with less of the pressure of supporting Verstappen, and now he can kind of focus on his own career within Williams. So maybe that kind of also plays into why he has had quite considerable performance from as compared to his teammates. So, but for Nicholas Latifi, I don't think that he has quite a bright future in Formula One if this is how it's going to continue to pan out. So he does need to watch out, because he is in the hot seat and he might get thrown off the team.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation there, and it seems like a very likable guy, but at the end of the day, the stopwatch doesn't lie, and you need to perform. That is, of course, unless your dad owns the team. And moving ahead to Aston Martin, the other Canadian, well, driver, I suppose, in in Lance Stroll has not had the best start of things in Aston Martin, but his teammate for one race only so far, Sebastian Vettel has also had just as horrific a start, and Nico Hulkenberg didn't seem to do an awful lot in that car either. So it's clearly that the car is not doing what certainly Lawrence Stroll will be hoping for. How do you see this as a possibility of changing this weekend, and do they have a chance of repeating the sixth place from 2020 that Sergio Perez was able to get them?
I doubt it. I heavily doubt it because there's only so much that you can do within race weekends to make your car much better, and it's not seeming like this is the car to do that, which is a shame because as much as we saw last year, there's such huge projects happening at the factory, and he Lawrence Stroll kept on mentioning how he wants his team to be a race winning team by the start of the season, and that's not looking like a possibility from the very early on within the season. So I don't think that this car has the ability to do much for the team, especially seeing as how the previous race went, which was the race weekend as a whole, not even the race, the weekend as a whole was a shambles, and it just fell to the ground and broke to pieces. So I don't know if a strong season is what Aston Martin needs to be looking forward to this weekend. Maybe this season, maybe they just need to pull a horse and just wait for next season to have a new car that they can actually develop, because it's not looking like this is the car that can do the job so far.
Oh, that's a damning condemnation there of the Aston Martin car. I would like to caveat that by saying that the engineers on the ground did an absolutely phenomenal job all weekend. Repairing the constant crashes from Stroll and Vettel
Definitely.
throughout the season, and then obviously throughout the weekend rather, and then obviously with the engine failure, which they then had to replace. They did a phenomenal job all weekend, and it must have been soul destroying and such a hard job for them that last weekend. That old Jordan team still, has the spirit of Eddie Jordan flowing through their veins, but it just seems that up the top they haven't been able to design a car. And the difficulty is that it seems like that's what they did last year. They sacked off development to focus on this year, and this is what they've come up with, which is not really a promising situation for the team. But as well, you need to have the drivers, as we've said as well with the Haas team and with Williams' team. You need to have drivers delivering on track, and I've already obviously been quite critical of Stroll, but you have to look at four-time champion Sebastian Vettel. I know he's only had one weekend in the car, but even in testing, he didn't seem like he was interested, and a lot of people are saying this is his farewell tour, and he's just going to leave Formula One at the end of the season. Where do you stand on Sebastian Vettel? Because I'm certainly now in the I love Seb camp, which is not what I used to be back in the 2010 to 2013. But certainly now he's up there with one of my favourite drivers. But it's tough to see what we're seeing right now. So how do you see him his season panning out from here?
It is tough to see, and it's a bleak prediction that I have for the team. So I don't know if I can see Sebastian doing much for the team. Just like you said in testing, he didn't seem interested, and like he's had COVID, and now he's kind of in recovery from COVID. So does that mean it impairs his performance going along? And I don't know if I see such a strong week end coming along in Imola, and I don't think that translates into the season as a whole. And it is tough to see because you want to root for Sebastian, especially with just who he is as a person. He's a decent human being, and he shows that in outside, like off the track, and in interviews, and just in how he is as a person. So it's hard to see, but I don't know if there's much that he can do to turn things around.
Yeah, it's difficult to watch, and I think as well. We saw how coming back from COVID-19 affected Hamilton in the final race of 2020, and even or the second well, even the final race of 2020, and even going into 2021. So it may well be some not quite considered effects that Sebastian Vettel's feeling, but I really hope he can get things together. But look, you just look at him. I know he's donning his freshly purchased hair, but he looks tired. He looks shaggy. He looks like a dad who's just had the second child, and he looks tired with Formula One, and it's difficult to watch. And I hope it's just him kind of getting to grips with this new car and the expectation that's not there, and he if whether he looks for other options in Formula One or whether he just decides he's had enough. I can't see him being in that car next year. But where is he? Is
Yeah.
he going to be out of Formula One, or is he going to be somewhere else? I don't see where else would be an option for him. Looking at the grid, unless Williams could tempt him, he loves he loves the British the British culture. Williams would probably be the best option for him. That would be the only real car that I can. He's not going to go to Alfa Romeo. He's not going to go to Haas. Alpine won't have him. McLaren won't have him. They already said that before. So it's tough to see, and I just hope that we do see him in Formula One next year. But with what team? It's certainly
Yeah.
up for debate. But I think it's time now to nail our colours to the wall and decide what's going to happen at the weekend. So I have literally not even thought about my predictions throughout this show because I haven't really had a chance to think about it myself. But that's why I'm going to go to you first for your predictions, Olivia. Pole position, the podium, and a bold prediction for the race. What do you think is going to happen?
I think I'm gonna go with pole position Carlos, just to spice things up a bit, because I do feel kind of like an urgency from him to perform. So I think he's gonna try and bang it out with a pole position. What was the other one? Sorry, pole
So
position.
your podium predictions, first, second, and third, and then we can do a bold prediction as well. We can come back to that if you want.
I do think first, second, and third will be Charles in P1, Carlos in P2, and Sergio in P3.
Wow, excellent. So I'm in the thinking similar to you, but I think it's going to be Max Verstappen for pole position, just with that edge in qualifying he seems to have. For the podium, I'm going to go slightly different on that. I'm going to go for a Carlos Sainz win. He's going to be battling out with Verstappen, who's going to be in second, and then Sergio Perez in third. I think Leclerc's luck is going to run out this weekend, and for the championship, we certainly need that to happen. So that's what I'm going to go for my podium. So something crazy that you think could potentially happen. Give us a bold prediction.
Oh gosh. I see. I don't know. This is tough. um,
You can say Mick Schumacher
maybe.
for the podium.
I think I'll go a bit safer than that and do a McLaren in podium again.
Fantastic. I would definitely love to see that. I was thinking maybe something along the lines of an Alfa Romeo podium, Valtteri Bottas in Valtteri Bottas's hands, but I think I'm going to go even crazier and say that Aston Martin get a double points finish. That's going to be my bold prediction. Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel come home in ninth and 10th after a crazy race with rain showers and only 10 finishes or something along those lines. So that's my bold prediction, and that's it for our Imola preview. If you want to hear more from Formula One Grid Talk, we have a huge back catalogue of shows, as well as reviews and previews and analysis. We also run a fireside chat series, which is normally airs midweek and features interviews and laid-back chats with people in and around Formula One. This week's show featured Michael Lamonato, the Australian journalist, which I sat down with and had a lovely chat on Thursday morning. He hosts the Box of Neutrals and F1 Strategy Report, so give that a listen if you haven't done so already. We also run a Patreon, so if you want to help us continue to do what we do, please consider donating to support us. Everything goes back into the show and will help us improve your viewing and listening experience. We're available on all major podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Verbal, Omni Studio and Pocket Casts, as well as being available on the F1 Chronicle website too. All our race shows go out live on YouTube straight after the event, and we have a post show where we answer your questions from the live chat. Just search for F1 Chronicle on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we're going live. We will be back midweek for another fireside chat, and also to review the Sprint and Grand Prix races this weekend at Imola. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.